Hi, I'm Dave Simon, and I'd like to start off today with a sports analogy. So I want you to imagine for a second, there are two American football teams. One football team is from Texas, and the other one's from Florida. Now, the Texas football team has a fully equipped team with a coach, and the team from Florida, they have a full team of players, but they had to make some budget cuts. So they decided that their quarterback will serve as coach as well. So the quarterback in American football is the leader out on the field. So this Florida and this Texas team go head to head in a game. Now, both teams are equally matched in terms of skill and ability, but one team, the Texas team, has a coach who's standing on the sidelines, and the team from Florida doesn't have a coach, or the quarterback out in the field's playing the role of coach as well. So which team do you think is likely to perform better in this game? Well, I put my money on the team with the coach. Why? Because the coach is on the sidelines and he has a bird's eye view. He has a macro perspective of what's going on with his team and with the opponent and all the dynamics at play. The team from Florida, the coach is the quarterback as well. He's focused on his own abilities as an athlete. He's focused on what's happening on the field, but because he's so close to the game, because he's in the trenches, he's unable to see all the dynamics at play. And the same applies to you in your music studio. If you're teaching in your music studio, you're unable to see certain dynamics at play. You're down in the trenches. You're dealing with the students. You're dealing with all the fires that come up on a daily basis. A music studio owner that doesn't teach is able to step back and not only look at their studio and identify its strengths, identify its weaknesses or its vulnerabilities, but they're also able to look at the forces in the market. So I want to break this down a little bit more. This makes me think of something I heard Tim Topham once say. Tim said that a lot of music teachers just back up. They just stumble into their profession as being a music teacher. They don't deliberately go out and seek this career. And that certainly applies to me. When I was a senior in high school, a freshman boy came up to me and asked me if I would give him some bass guitar lessons. I said, sure. It didn't even occur to me that I should charge for this. And he came over, I gave him his lesson. And at the end, he handed me a $10 bill. And I said, Eric, why are you giving me this money? And he said, well, my mom insisted that I pay you. So I took the money and like a light bulb went on. I was like, wow, I just made more money teaching than I do working my, high school day job as a busboy in a restaurant. Maybe there's something to this teaching thing. And perhaps you have a story like that where somebody wanted some help with learning the piano and you were glad to help them out. One thing led to another, and next thing you know, you have a few students, you have a nice business going for yourself. The problem with um, people like us, and I'm assuming that you sort of fit this description of just stumbling into a teaching business, is that you don't put the entrepreneurial hat on day one. And that's something that you ultimately need to do. And many of us embark on our journeys as music teachers, and we're just kind of drifting out to sea, and it's not even occurring. We're so caught up in thinking about teaching and a quality music lesson that we're not even considering the business aspects and dynamics at play. And not only we're not considering about it, but it's a bit of an annoyance because look, we're artists, we're here to teach. But ultimately, you have to put on your entrepreneurial hat, put on your marketing hat if you want to grow your business. So today I'm going to talk about how teaching in your music studio can actually hinder and limit its growth. I want to first break down 3 different music studio types. Not so much type, but maybe mindset is the more appropriate word. So I'm going to, these 3 different mindsets are the solo teacher, the reluctant entrepreneur, and then the entrepreneur. So many of us start off as the solopreneur, the solo teacher. And your objective at that point is simply to fill up your schedule, and when you only have 2 or 3 students, getting up to say 30 students can be seem like a real mountain to climb. So you're focused on that. And most of your marketing is word of mouth. Maybe you hang some posters up or flyers up at the coffee shop, but you're just trying to get to 20 or 30 students. And you max out, and then you realize at that point, well, this is great, but I'm really not making as much money as I need to be making, or I simply would like to make more money than I am. And once you get to that point, your options are a little limited. You can raise your rates, and that's nice. That might, certainly bring in maybe a few extra $100 a month, but perhaps you need a few extra $1,000 a month. So then you can look at the group lesson model. And now that, if done properly, can certainly be a much more lucrative business than just private lessons. But again, I want to talk about mindset. At a certain point, studio owners' mindset needs to shift if they want to scale, if they want to grow, if they want to bring in new teachers, if their objective is to scale their business so that they can lead a lifestyle that is well beyond what they're currently able to sustain. And they have to adapt the mindset of an entrepreneur. And you can have that mindset from day one. You can have that mindset as the solo teacher. Many of us, myself included, didn't develop that mindset until I was pretty late in the game. So I want to talk about the next step in the journey of the music studio owner. The music studio owner now decides that, hey, my schedule's maxed out. I want to make some more money. I know what I'll do. I'll hire another teacher. Great. Now there's potential to bring an additional revenue stream. And they bring in some teacher, someone who's seasoned and demands a high rate of pay. And they pay them that $30 an hour, maybe $40 an hour. And I'm talking in US dollars. And they're taking, maybe 50% or maybe 40% of that new revenue is going back into the studio. Now, and let me step back for a moment, before you can even bring in that second teacher, you have to move out of your house, or, maybe you're not out of your house, but stop teaching out of your home, or stop going to students' homes, and you need your own standalone, studio. So now you've got rent, you've got utilities, you've got insurance, but you've got this new teacher on board to help with that. And maybe your ultimate plan is to bring in a second or third teacher to help offset those expenses, and more importantly, to generate new income for you. And you're still teaching in your studio. So I call this this step of the journey the reluctant entrepreneur. And I call it the reluctant entrepreneur because quite often a person is thinking they have the same mindset that they had when they were the solopreneur, but all that's changed is that they want to generate more revenue. And they haven't done anything in their mindset or in their thinking about their business. And what they're typically relying on to grow their business are the same tactics and strategies that they used to build up their solo practice. And those practices or those tactics and strategies are not going to necessarily be effective when you're trying to actually grow a studio with a small teaching staff of say two to three teachers. So your mind shifts. Your mindset has to shift. You have to start thinking more like a marketer. You have to start understanding your customers' wants and needs more. You have to begin to think about what type of messages can I broadcast that are going to resonate with my ideal customer? And what tactics can I use to deploy my message? Now, if you're teaching in your studio still, and look, most of us have to teach when we initially bring in those first instructors. You just can't afford not to. But what you can afford to do is to say to yourself, I'm teaching today because I have to, because I'm not generating enough revenue to not teach. But my plan is to stop teaching so I can purely focus on the business. The moment you have that mindset, everything changes. You now can put pen to paper and ask yourself, well, how do I get there? What do I need to do in my business? What does my business need to look like? How many students do my new teachers need to have? And what should I be charging? And you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be paying top dollar for your music instructors. Maybe it would be more cost effective to hire really good musicians who've never taught, and you're going to teach them how to teach. You're going to give them a skill that they have for the rest of their lives. You don't have to pay them $40 an hour. You can pay them $15 to $20 an hour. They're unskilled. They're unskilled educators, but they're great musicians. And if they're great communicators and they have a way with kids and with adults, they're totally trainable. So it's just having that mindset of developing a path out of teaching. And I'm going to talk in a moment about why that's so important. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but I love teaching. And this, I got into this because I love teaching. I love music. The whole idea of making a career as a musician is so appealing to me. Well, if that is the reality for you, then you shouldn't have hired these other teachers. You should go back to the solopreneur, where it's just you and your students. You're the star of the show. Everything is about you and being able to find enough people in your market that align with your vision. But typically, the reason why you hired more teachers is because you want to generate some more revenue for yourself. Your financial needs are demanding that. And so you ultimately have to embrace that reality. If you need to make more money, if the solo teaching path isn't enough, then you have to think like an entrepreneur. Because now, once you hire a teacher, two teachers, three teachers, you are no longer running a teaching business. You're running an organization, and an organization needs leadership, it needs vision, it needs purpose. And if you look at everything that a leader is, that's what you need to be. To go back to the football analogy, the team from Texas had a coach. The coach is the leader. The coach has the vision. The coach is thinking strategically at all times. The coach isn't thinking about one individual job in the organization. The coach is looking at the big picture. When you're teaching in your studio, you can try to think big picture, but you think about your students during the week. You come up with new ideas for lesson plan. Oh, Jimmy's going to love this. Or you're thinking about some musical troubleshooting technique that you want to use with Susie. Now I get why she's struggling with those chord transitions. You're investing mental energy. You're burning brain calories thinking about your students and thinking about their musical needs. Your organization has needs, and those needs are top priority. Not that your students aren't a priority, but your students' needs aren't going to be met if your organizational needs aren't being met. And that's where you as the leader need to step up. There are certain things in your music studio that only you can do. Only you can come up with a vision. Only you can come up with a mission for your studio, a mission meaning how does your business make the world a better place? What impact are you trying to have on the world and on children through music? You need to be able to articulate that in a message and build a marketing strategy around that message. You can be thinking about those things even when you're the solopreneur. Again, it's all about mindset. It's at what point in your journey do you take on the mindset of a true leader? I mean, think of about a leader of a nation. They're making all these, tough decisions, but they're always looking at from a macro standpoint. I encourage you to ask yourself this question. Write down or try this exercise. Write down everything that you do in your music studio, taking out the trash, collections, billing, rescheduling, teaching, um, just everything. And then look at those things and ask yourself, on this list, which of these things can I delegate to somebody else? Not that you have the money to do that right now, but to simply identify and categorize things that can be delegated. Everything can be delegated except things that fall under the category of leadership. The leader doesn't have to do the billing. The leader doesn't even have to do the sales calls or dealing with incoming calls. People can be trained to do that. All the leader needs to be doing is standing on the bow of the ship, going, where are we headed? Why are we headed there? And what do I need to do with my crew to get there? That is how a real business leader is thinking. Now, the third level in a music studio owner's journey is the entrepreneur, is the person who is no longer teaching and is like the coach on the football team from Texas, standing on the sidelines, looking at the team, looking for vulnerabilities, because where you're vulnerable is where your competition can strike, can take advantage of you. You want to identify vulnerabilities and strengthen those points. You want to certainly identify where you're strong and amplify those aspects of your business. You want to be able to look at dynamics at play in your market. When you're teaching, it's hard to do. When you're in the room with the student teaching, your music studio is going on outside of that room. There's all these people moving about, parents, things are happening, and you're in this room with this one kid. That's really not fair to your culture at large in your studio. That means that 30 or 40 kids in your, let's say your, 100 plus student studio, 20 to 30, they're getting all your attention. Everybody else, they aren't getting your attention. And look, you might not be the best teacher in your studio, but your customers assume that you are, because your name is on the door. You can have a much better job of building culture and building community by getting out of the teaching studio and making all your customers feel like they have a personal connection to you. So, to review, the three different mindsets of a music studio owner is the solopreneur, the studio owner who's just trying to fill up their time, raise rates, maybe shift to a group model to make more money, the reluctant entrepreneur, which many of us are in. Many of us stay there for years. We get stuck there. It's hands down the most stressful, because you're teaching and you're doing everything else, and there's a lack of leadership, just like the football team that doesn't have a coach. There's There's some leadership out on the field, but there's no one standing back, taking care of the team, looking out for the team. And then there's the entrepreneur who's looking at the business from a bird's eye view, identifying strengths, vulnerabilities, and opportunities. And there's no reason why you can't develop the entrepreneurial mindset from day one, from your very first student.